Hey sports fans, I've got a super fun project for you today. We're gonna work on some super simple half square triangles, but I'm also gonna teach you how to get your fussy cuts cut on point. Let's get started. I'm not sure who's more enthusiastic, quilters or sports fans, maybe the person who is both, right? And I just want to clear the air right now. I chose the Florida Gators today based on the colors involved, the orange, the blue, the green, because I love those colors together. I know hardly anything about sports teams, so please don't hold, if you're not a Gators fan, don't hold it against me. I want to talk you through the supplies for today's project. Again, this is going to be a super easy project for those newer quilters out there. So I also designed this with the 10-inch square in mind, but I did use yardage. So what I did is I chose my prints that I loved. And like I said, I picked the Florida Gators and I got myself some theme prints. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about how to get these squares cut down. But I chose 2 theme prints and I actually got 4 1/4 yards of each because it's on the back of the quilt, it's on the binding of the quilt, and it's also a lot of these large squares that we need to get down on point. Now, the orange fabric we have is doubled in the quantities because I match an orange to a blue and an orange to a green for the half square triangles I make. So therefore, what I'm going to need is 1 1/4 yards each of the blue and of the green, but I'm going to need 2 1/2 of the orange to make all the math work. I hope that makes sense. And we've got our supplies listed in the link below. And while you're there, click print on your free printable. Now this is my rough draft or my sketch. I thought it'd be fun for you to see. I like to draw as well. We've got a typed version that's a little easier for you to read down there. But what we're doing today, if you look at this giant quilt behind me, it is a 70 by 70 quilt. So it's super warm and cozy, but it's really broken into quadrants. This here is the main quadrant I'm going to walk you through today, and that's what you see right here in the printable. It's just this one main quadrant, but as I talk about some of the cuts, it's going to give you the information you need for all of the cutting to make the entire 70 by 70. Let's get rolling on these half square triangles. Now, a half square triangle, if you are not aware, is whoa, that looks kind of neat, doesn't it? But you can't see what I'm talking about. Half square triangle is that. It is a square divided in half on the bias, big word there, and that's going to give us 2 triangles on either side. And the easiest way to make them, in my opinion, is the way my dear friend Jenny Doan taught me. And I'm going to take 2 squares, so I've got a green here and the orange here, and I'm going to sew these together with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to go all the way around all 4 sides. So I'm going to start at the top corner, and then I'm holding this bottom corner, and I'm also holding this opposite corner over here, because just like when you're playing softball on Monday nights, I want you to run all the way through first base right here. I want you to sew all the way through that corner because I'm going to rotate and pivot. I am not going to try to stop a 1/4 inch back. Oop. Now, we're going to do the same thing all 4 sides. Here, pivot. Little pressure always on this outside corner, and what that's going to help is us finish on the final edge as we come around here. Just like this. And now I have no pucker or anything down there at that final corner, and I just love the way it finishes out. Now, I have gotten in the habit of also taking the time to dog ear or remove the corners of my half square triangle base, because what I want to do is not have a lot of bulk in that seam later. So I've taken a moment and I have now removed the extra corners. I'm going to take a 15-inch ruler and I'm going to lay it where the thread crosses to where the thread crosses here, and I'm going to cut this cut. Lots of good pressure because I'm not going to move the fabric yet. I have one more cut to make. Right through here, here, where those threads cross again. Now, once this is cut, we're going to go ahead and press. And to play with that press to the dark side, what I did is I just considered my orange my light. So whether I'm using the blue or the green half square triangles, I hold that in the air and then I press this way. So that folds it over like this. And that helps me with my seam management later on, because I'm going to start matching up my blue and green half square triangles to start getting into the half unit we're building. What does that mean, Rob? All these weird terms today. Next thing we need to do is we need to marry together a blue and a green half square triangle, and we want them all to be the same. So I'm going to take all of these here, and I'm going to always rotate them until they look like my blue and green little tents. Now at that point, you can actually chain pieces if you like. You don't have to, but I'm going to come back to the sewing machine. I'm going to start up at that top corner again, and we're going to sew all the way through these. This way. And now as you go to your ironing board, you may want to choose again, the green is the darkest so that we're always pressing one more direction to help, because at this point we're ready to start building our block units or our pieces to start forming the legs in the center of the actual quadrant. So we need 2 of these pieces to make a block. We're going to make 4 per quadrant that look like this. Let me show you. Here's a cool finished one, right? So these ones are done tip to butt end of the triangles. And then we're also going to need to make a center square. You're going to need 4 of these for the entire project, or 1 per quadrant. This is what it looks like. And you can see here that all I've done with this unit is rotate it so it goes together here. And that's why I was talking about pressing your seams, because the next step would be to put these together this way, run them through the machine, or the first way I showed you, so that you're ready and you have all of those pieces built per quadrant. Not much work and a lot of fun, and you've almost got your quilt created. However, we've got a little something to talk about, and that's what happens when we have these really cool print fabrics, but everything's heading in one direction. We can't just cut them willy-nilly. We have to really pay attention to what we're doing to get what we're after. Now, in this, let me show you maybe with a finished triangle instead. What I'm after here is I want my cut line to be running on what's called point for these squares that have now become diamonds. So in order to get this, I don't want to mathematically have to figure out how long to cut these. What I did is I took my units here. Once they were pressed nice and flat, I went ahead and measured them, and mine came out at 13.5 long here. So then I went to my big square, which you've got to have one of these if you don't already. And what I did is I looked here and I thought, oh, if this is a 13.5 and I followed it over, I have the square I need. I just need to use this diagonal line on my prints. Ooh, we do not want to cut those. We're going to need those as we get ready for layout in a few minutes. Okay, so what I don't want is I don't want a square like this, because then they'll be cut. So I want to get my square in here with this angle. Now I'm panicking, it doesn't fit. Don't panic, we're only after the 13. So for this right now, I have my fabric folded, so I can go ahead and get this cut, but I need to really stop talking and look for a second, because I don't get to do this twice today. I only have this last piece with me here. So I've got 13.5. 13.5 here, that makes that square. And then what I'm doing, just for my double check, I'm following this line, and I'm right above the eye of one of my gators, so I'm perfect. And then I'm also watching this line come along the white stripes in there, so everything is squared up but on point. We should be good to go. So I'm going to take a full cut. I'm going to go all the way through here, and I've got a good amount of pressure in the center of my ruler right now, because this is probably not recommended for all of you, but I'm going to kind of cut away from my body over here. And that can be a little challenging if you don't have good pressure on your ruler. Now, what I also want to do, I'm going to rotate this, make my life a little easier. Now what we do, we spin our square and we find our 13.5 marker again. It's already rotated the print for us. We're already on point. Now I'm just looking at it like a square, like we've always known as squares in our quilting world. So that is awesome, just like this. I'm just double checking because I don't want to make any mistakes right now. And I'm going to cut here, and I'm going to cut here. Okay, so that should do what we need, but I am going to ask you, just slow down, take a deep breath. Hey, pat yourself on the back, you did it. But one of the squares in the quilt is cut horizontally, and the other one we need is going to be cut vertically, okay? So I'm just going to cut these one at a time right now. And I can do that with this just the same. I can lay it. Can I do this just the same? No, I can't. I need my 24. Guess where it's at? It's hidden under the quilt. Let's go hunting. It's under here somewhere. There it is. I love always having my tools in the same spot so I can always find them again. That's what we need. We just always want the right tool for the job. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lay my long 24 ruler there, tip to tip. This one I'm cutting up and down, also known as vertically. There. This one here is done horizontally. So I'm just going to rotate my print so that my body is safe as possible. Let's get those tips just as they need to be there. Some of you triangle experts out there right now might be asking, well, what about this 1/4 inch out of the edge and all that kind of thing? Well, let's not worry, because as we're building this as points, when these come back together, our straight lines are going to be stitched across here. The math I've given you has already accounted for that little overhang that you need as a triangle. In case you are an advanced quilter just following along on today's video and you're like, I wonder if he's accounted for that. It's there for you. So do follow the numbers we've provided today. It should work perfectly. Now, I'm ready to lay this out with you, but we got to clear this table off and get started. So here we go. Whether you're at your design wall or working flat on your table, let's just focus on these as the quadrants as we go. So I'm going to start with my centerpiece. As I bring it back in, you recognize that. But remember, it is on point. So we're going to just go ahead and start by rotating that now. And then as the legs come in, all of them were made the same. And so yes, you're going to have sections where the green and the blue kind of checkerboard at this point. But they'll also be the same on the opposite sides. If you want to design counter to that, you're welcome to. You just play with your half square triangles before you build your units. So here's my legs running. This is the beginning of the quadrant, right? Now what I wanted to do is I want to go back in and I want to fill in the quadrants. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gator print here and I'm going to drop it in up top. And the direction is maintaining. So I'm considering this the top of my quadrant as I'm working. Therefore, the bottom one is going to come down here, and I'm going to use the opposite print on this quadrant. So I'm going to need my side-to-side cuts. So this one, print still is all running up and down, and then print running here. So for the next quadrant, if you look at the quilt closely, where the prints meet, it does the checkerboard all throughout the quilt as well. So while I'm laying out my quadrants, then I'm looking for, let's just look right here, I'm looking for the next print that is going to be in the right direction, but is also going to be the checkerboard effect to the other print I was using. So this one will go here, which means that its companion will go on the opposite side of the second quadrant as I build it. Hopefully that makes good sense. And we only have one last piece we need to talk about, and this piece here is a basic half square triangle cut, but not assembled first, and it's the cap pieces. So let me show you what I'm talking about. These cap pieces here, it's just 2 of the triangles, and they're going to fit in here, and they're in the same direction for my blue-green combination as the legs were created. And this now fills this all into a square, but you could have also used your print if you wanted. And if you used your print, then you would have originally cut those squares with the direction and the ruler running with the direction of the design in the print. And you would then play with your checkerboard as you go around. So if you're building these cap style corners, what I really want you to do is I want you to cut the half square triangles before you sew them. So this at one point would have been, and I cut them with 1 blue and 1 green. You don't need any orange for this. But at one point, this here was that square. So I've done my diagonal cuts as I showed you earlier. And then as these come out here, instead of being joined where they would have been like this, they're going to be joined together like this. So now they form that same shape here for the cap. So now that you know how to construct all the units necessary to build your own Sport Star quilt, let's talk about how to put the units all together. Now, when I'm constructing these, I basically work for the biggest lines first. So I need to make this entire row, let's call it. And so that's going to be done by sewing this seam and this seam. So I literally built the legs onto the center here first, and then I came down and I added the cap. One of the sewing points I will point out, whenever I'm using my half square triangles, every time there's a seam, I try to match it up. So when I go right sides together here, I'm really feeling for this center seam here, as well as my corners to make sure that that's going to line up. So I created the rows. So this is one long row, then another row, then the cap goes in, another row, and then the cap goes in, and that builds the full quadrant. One more time back to the quilt with me. Again, 1, 2, 3, and 4 quadrants all coming together to make the 70 by 70 sports star here. Reminder of your checkerboards and all the fun that's going on. But the last thing that's really cool with this, partly because of the size, but I also wanted the motif, is there's footballs quilted into this quilt, and that was done on a long arm machine with a computer program that puts in the designs really cool. So that's another great way that you can support a long arm quilter in your community, or you can do like me and mail it to the Missouri Star Quilt Company and they'll take care of it for you. And you know what the best thing about that is you can style your designs with your projects. Sometimes free motion's important, sometimes the pantograph's important, sometimes stitch in the ditch is important. And that's the best thing about quilting. There's something out there for everyone. And I know you sports fans are dying to give your opinion on who you think is going to be the big winner this year. You know, I guess I'm a Gators fan because of the colors. Let's load the comments up. I want to hear from you. Who's your team and are they going to win this year? Thanks again for following along right here at Man Sewing. Oh, hey, are you still in here? I thought you would have been checking out some of those other great videos. You know, we've got a link there, over there. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you never miss a minute of the action. We'll catch you next time at Man Sewing.